Okay, let's dive into one of the most, truly chilling figures in the entire lore, the Sapphire Jester. But to really get him, we have to throw out the whole good versus evil playbook. This is something else entirely. We're going on a deep dive, a psychoanalytic journey into this terrifyingly seductive idea of just wanting to
So this is where it all starts, with this one single detail that is just so creepy. He bleeds nothing. You remember the Crimson Jester, right? That guy was all chaos, bleeding irony and manic energy all over the place. This new Jester? He's the polar opposite. He's defined by nothing. An absolute, profound emptiness. It's like the void itself decided to stand up and walk around.
And that's the big question, right? How does a being become the will to nothingness? Think about it. This is not your classic villain origin story. He wasn't corrupted, he didn't have a tragic fall from grace. No, this was a choice. A deliberate, kind of terrifying decision to just erase himself from existence.
All right, so to figure out the end, we've got to go all the way back to the beginning, back to where the wound first opened up. And our story, believe it or not, doesn't start with a person. It starts with a single drop of water, a droplet that was aware of itself. And for him, that awareness was a terrible, crushing freedom.
You know, for most, consciousness is a gift, right? Well, for this droplet, it was an absolute curse. The very fact that it was separate, that it was an I instead of just a part of the whole ocean, that was the source of this constant, just unbearable suffering. And there's actually a name for this in psychoanalysis. It's called the trauma of individuation. It's this deep psychological pain you can get from realizing you're separate from everything else. So while some might see being unique as a strength, this droplet felt its own edges, its own skin, as a wound, a constant reminder that it was cut off from the comforting oneness of the sea.
And this feeling, it didn't just stay as sadness. It festered, and it grew into something much, much darker. Something called odium fati. It's Latin, and it basically means hatred of fate. So it wasn't just bummed about being lonely. It actively hated its own unique existence. It despised the very fact that it even existed at all.
So what does a being that hates its own existence even want? It's not power, it's not knowledge. It's something called the nirvana principle. This is a Freudian idea, and it's pretty simple. It's the drive to get rid of all stress, all tension, all stimulation, to get to absolute zero, the kind of total peace you can only find in non-existence. The droplet didn't want a better life. It wanted no life at all.
Okay, so with that goal in mind, total annihilation, the droplet makes its choice. It fully embraces this desire for nothingness. And that kicks off the next part of its journey. It turns its back on the light, on the surface, and just willingly starts to sink, down into the dark, into the crushing deep.
So, what's pulling it down? It's not just gravity. In Freud's world, it's a cosmic force called thanatos, the death drive. It's like an instinct, but instead of driving you to survive, it drives you to dissolve, to fall apart, to go back to being simple matter. The lore calls it a predatory current, and its promise isn't power. Its promise is sweet oblivion. Its seduction is the promise that all the pain will finally end.
And this journey to erasure, it's laid out as a very deliberate four-step process. First, you reject the surface. You reject life itself. Second, you surrender to that current, to Thanatos. Third, you descend into the core, past the point of no return. And fourth, industrial erasure. The soul gets systematically unmade. And that's the destination, the industrial core of the void. The sources call it an anti-womb, which is just an incredible, terrifying concept, right? A womb takes simple stuff and builds it up into complex life. This place, it does the exact opposite. It takes something that's alive and aware, and it processes it backwards, strips it down, melts it into just raw, non-living material. And what crawls out of that core is not the droplet anymore. It's the Sapphire Jester, the perfect duplicate. He's a perfect copy of his environment. He's uniform, he's silent, he's empty. He is, for all intents and purposes, the finished product. He's what comes off the death drive's assembly line when everything goes exactly right.
So, okay, now that we get where he came from, we can pull the camera back and see the bigger picture. Because this isn't just about one tragic droplet. This is about one side of a massive cosmic war for the very nature of existence itself. And the other side of that war, the total opposite of Thanatos, is Eros, the life drive. This is the instinct that pushes us to live, to connect with others, to build complicated things, to strive for more.
It's the force that says, yeah, being an individual is painful, but it's also joyful, and it's worth it.
And this chart just lays it all out perfectly. You've got these two extremes clashing. On one side, you have Wutan, who is pure Eros. He's the arrow of longing, that forward momentum. He represents the agonizing joy of life and the will to power that builds those emerald spires. Then, on the other side, you have the Sapphire Jester, pure Thanatos. He's the drowning deep, the sweet oblivion of non-life, the will to nothingness that just wants industrial uniformity. It's literally life versus on-life.
So, what's the verdict here? What's the big takeaway? Why is this quiet, empty Jester seen as so much more dangerous than the loud, chaotic Crimson Jester that came before him?
Well, think about it. The Crimson Jester was a conflagration, right? A massive fire. He was all manic ego, trying to rage against the void, and like any fire, he eventually burned himself out. But the Sapphire Jester, he is the void. He's not fighting it, he's the embodiment of it. He didn't burn out, he chose to become the ash. His threat isn't a loud explosion, it's the quiet, creeping silence that comes after.
And what's so terrifying is that the Jester's very existence basically proves Mephistopheles' darkest theory right. That deep down, what we all might crave isn't happiness or safety. It's the cessation of being, an end to the struggle, just the simple, quiet peace of not existing anymore.
So here it is, the final analogy for him. The Sapphire Jester is like a kid who's so terrified of the dark inside his own mind that he burns the whole house down. Not to get some light, but just to become ash, so he never has to feel that fear again. His goal isn't to win the game, it's to end it, forever, so no one ever has to play again.